7.3b multi-step special right triangles. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to start with the known value triangle. So if we look at number 1, we have 2 triangles here. So there's 1 triangle, and here is our other triangle. So in our first triangle, the blue triangle, we have a known value right here. We have 9. We know that that side is 9. So that's the triangle we're going to start with. So this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, we know we have M across from our 30 degrees. We have 2M across from the right angle. And then our final one we have is M squared 3, which is across from your 60 degrees. So we know that Z, if M is 9, Z is going to be 2 times 9, which is 18. Now for this middle side, I know it doesn't ask us to find this middle side, but we do have to find this shared side. So that shared side is just 9 squared to 3. Just replace that M with 9. Now that all the sides in this first blue triangle are found, we can move on to our second triangle, the green one. That is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And in a 45, 45, 90, we know we call our sides M, M, and M squared to 2, but I'm going to change mine to be the letter N, just so that we don't get confused between the two triangles. So I don't want you to think if this is M and we have an M here that it's the same letter, so I'm just going to use a different letter. So now we have, in this green triangle, we have N squared to 2, N, and N. Now remember, we found this shared side to be 9 squared to 3. So in the green triangle, we know that N squared of 2 is equal to that 9 squared to 3. Because again, remember, that's that shared side. So we can use that to find our N value, which will get us X and Y. So we're going to just divide both sides by square root of 2. So now we have N by itself, and N is equal to 9 squared root of 3 over square root of 2. But we cannot keep square root of 2 in the bottom of our fraction, so we're going to times the top and bottom of our fraction by square root of 2, because we're going to rationalize that denominator. So we get 9 square roots of 6. Remember, if they're both in a radical, you can multiply them together. The bottom, we get the square root of 4, which is just 2. So this is what N is. And then we know that N is also X and Y. So this is what X is equal to 9 square root of 6 over 2, which is that same value for Y. Okay, number 2. So we have 2 different triangles again. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to find a value of one of the sides that we know. 32 is a value that we know, so that means we are starting on the 45, 45, and 90 triangle, this red triangle first. So we're going to call this M, M squared of 2, and then M, because remember, we know these two sides are congruent. So first thing we can do is we can write this as 32, since these are the same sides. Now this one up here for X, just replace the M with 32. So X is equal to 32 square root of 2. And we're done for that part. Now moving on to this blue triangle, which is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. In this one, across from your 30 degrees is your n. Across from your 60 is your n square root of 3. And across from your right angle is 2n. So in this case, the shared side, I'm going to write it over here, we know it's 32, and it's also 2n. So 2n is equal to 32. We're just making an equation written out of what we know. So we know it's 2n, we know it's 32. So we can use that to solve for n. So just divide both sides by 2. So we get n is equal to 16. So now we know that z is 16 because z is n, and y is 16 square roots of 3. Okay, number 3. So we got two different triangles here and put together to make one big triangle. So in number 3, our known side length is 7 square roots of 3, which means we are doing this pink triangle first. It is a 30, 60, 90. So we know this is 90. Down here is our 30, which means this 7 square roots of 3 is our m, x is going to be 2m, and this shared side is m square roots of 3. So to find x, we're just going to do 2 times 7 square roots of 3. Now just a refresher, when you multiply this, only the 2 and the 7 multiply. The 2 does not multiply with the square root of 3. So we write this as x is equal to 14 square roots of 3. Now this shared side, we have to find this measure because without finding this shared side, we cannot find z or y. So I'm going to draw a little line. I'm going to do that over here. So if m is 7 square roots of 3 and the shared side is m square roots of 3, we're going to have this be 7 square roots of 3 times the square root of 3. Which now in this case, just like this last one, only the 2 and 7 could multiply because they're both outside the radical. Now here, only the square root of 3 and square root of 3 can multiply because they're both in a radical. So we get 7 square roots of 9, which the square root of 9 is just 3, so it's 7 times 3, which is just 21. So this shared side is 21. I'm going to rewrite that down here, 21. And in this triangle, we have right angle, we have a 30 degrees, so down here is our 60 degrees. That means this 21 is our n. I'm using that different letter again. Y is 2n, and z is n square root of 3. And because n is 21, y is just 2 times 21, which is 42. And z is just going to be 21 square roots of 3. So essentially in all of these problems, we'd have to go through and find that shared side length before we can continue. Okay, flip the page. I think there's one more. Yep. Okay, so again, first thing you're going to do is you're going to look for a shared side length. Well, we have right here this 18, which means we are starting with the 30, 60, 90 triangle, this pink triangle on the bottom. So that across from your 30 is your m, across from your 60 is m squared of 3, and across from your right angle is 2m. So we know 18 is equal to m squared root of 3, so that's the equation we're going to write. So m squared root of 3 is equal to 18. Solve for m. Well, to get m by itself, divide by square root of 3. So those square root of 3's cancel. So we get m is equal to 18 squared root of 3. But we don't want the square root of 3 on the bottom. So we're going to times top and bottom by square root of 3 to rationalize that denominator. So we have m is equal to 18 square root of 3 over, well, square root of 3 times square root of 3 is square root of 9, which is just 3. So I'm going to go ahead and just put 3 on the bottom. But we're not done yet, though. This 18 and 3 can reduce. So m is actually going to be 6 square roots of 3, which means z is 6 square roots of 3 because z is m. So z is 6 square roots of 3. Now this shared side, I'll draw a little line over here, that's 2m. So it's 2 times 6 square roots of 3, which would be 12 square roots of 3. So I'm going to write that right here, 12 square roots of 3. Now that we have this shared side found, we can move on to finding x and y. So we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, which means we are have an n, n square root 2. Common mistake I see students make is they want to make n just 12, but remember, this is not a square root of 2, so you can't just say n is 12 like some of the problems we've done in the past. We actually have to find n. So again, I'm going to draw a little line over here, and let's solve for n. So we have n square root of 2 is equal to 12 square roots of 3. Divide by square root of 2, because remember we were solving for n. Divide by square root of 2. So right now we have n is equal to 12 square roots of 3 over 2. This 12, the square root of 3 and square root of 2 did not reduce at all. So we're going to have to rationalize that denominator. So we have 12. Remember, these guys multiply, so 12 square roots of 6 over square root of 2 times square root of 2 is the square root of 4, which is just 2. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 2 here. But remember, these guys can reduce now that it's out of a radical. So we have n is equal to 6 square roots of 6. And remember, since x and y are n, then we know x and y are both 6 square roots of 6. Okay, so that was the end of these multi-step special right triangle problems.